Imagine you're standing on the surface of Mercury. Above you hangs a sun so enormous it dominates the sky. It doesn't look like the warm, distant star we see from Earth. Here, the sun appears nearly 3 times larger, blazing with a white intensity that turns the sky into a furnace. At first, the planet seems quiet. No clouds, no wind, no oceans, just endless grey rock stretching to the horizon. But the silence is deceiving. Because Mercury is not a calm world, it is the most extreme environment in the entire solar system, and if a human ever tried to survive here, they wouldn't last long. A planet of impossible temperatures. Let's start with the first problem. Temperature. On the day side of Mercury, temperatures reach 430 C. That's hot enough to melt lead. Any spacecraft landing here would instantly begin overheating. Metal expands. Electronics struggle to function. But the real shock comes when the sun sets, because Mercury has almost no atmosphere. On Earth, our atmosphere acts like a blanket, trapping heat and distributing it around the planet. Mercury has no such protection. When darkness falls, temperatures plunge to 180 C. In a matter of hours, the same ground that could melt metal becomes cold enough to freeze gases solid. That means Mercury experiences the largest temperature swing of any planet in the solar system, from furnace to deep freeze, every single day, the longest day in the solar system. But Mercury's days aren't like Earth's. One day on Mercury lasts 176 Earth days. That's almost 6 months of continuous sunlight, followed by 6 months of darkness. Imagine standing on a planet where the sun barely moves in the sky, slowly creeping across the horizon over months. And sometimes, something even stranger happens. Because of Mercury's unusual orbit, there are places on the planet where the sun appears to rise, stop, move backwards, and then rise again. This bizarre phenomenon happens because Mercury's rotation and orbit interact in a rare resonance. It's one of the strangest day-night cycles anywhere in the solar system, a planet scarred by violence. Look at Mercury's surface and you'll notice something disturbing. Crater after crater after crater. The entire planet looks like it has been relentlessly bombarded. And that's exactly what happened. Because Mercury sits deep within the sun's gravity well, objects traveling through the inner solar system accelerate dramatically before impact. Asteroids strike the surface at enormous speeds. Some impacts release more energy than millions of nuclear bombs. The result is a landscape frozen in time. Unlike Earth, Mercury has no weather, no erosion, and no tectonic activity to erase its scars. Every collision remains visible for billions of years. The sun's relentless radiation. But the sun isn't just bright, it's dangerous. Without a thick atmosphere, Mercury is constantly bombarded by solar radiation and charged particles streaming from the sun. These particles slam into the planet's surface at incredible speeds. Over time, they've literally blasted atoms off the ground, creating an ultra-thin atmosphere called an exosphere. It's not really air, it's more like a cloud of atoms slowly escaping into space. Standing on Mercury would mean constant exposure to solar radiation powerful enough to damage dinner within seconds. A planet that shrunk. Mercury also hides a strange geological secret. The planet is shrinking. Billions of years ago, Mercury was much hotter inside. As its core cooled, the planet slowly contracted. The crust had nowhere to go, so it wrinkled. Across Mercury's surface are enormous cliffs called lobate scarps, some stretching hundreds of kilometers. Imagine cliffs taller than mountains, formed because an entire planet slowly collapsed inward on itself. It's one of the few worlds in the solar system that is literally getting smaller over time. The iron heart of Mercury. Despite being the smallest planet, Mercury has an enormous iron core. In fact, the core takes up about 85% of the planet's radius. That's proportionally larger than any other planet in the solar system. Scientists believe something catastrophic happened early in Mercury's history. A massive collision may have stripped away much of its outer crust, leaving behind a metal-rich world. What remains is essentially a gigantic iron ball covered by a thin, rocky shell. The most dangerous place to orbit. Even getting close to Mercury is incredibly difficult. Because the gravity of the Sun is so strong, spacecraft approaching the planet accelerate to tremendous speeds. Slowing down enough to enter orbit requires enormous amounts of energy. That's why only a few missions have ever visited Mercury. NASA's Messenger mission spent years carefully adjusting its trajectory before finally entering orbit in 2011. And even then, the spacecraft had to endure extreme heat and radiation. Mercury doesn't just punish visitors on its surface, it challenges them even in space. A world that shouldn't exist. Mercury is a planet of extreme S, extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme radiation, extreme impacts. It sits dangerously close to the Sun, constantly exposed to forces that would destroy most worlds. And yet, it survived. For 4.5 billion years, this scorched, battered planet has orbited the Sun in silence. No atmosphere, no oceans, no life. Just rock, metal, and the relentless energy of a nearby star. When you look at Mercury through a telescope, it may seem like just another small planet, but in reality, you're looking at one of the most hostile environments in the entire solar system. A world that proves just how extreme planets can become.